it's Spence, the evil genius, with your WordPress tip of the day. Hey guys, I'm really excited because today's tutorial is going to make all of you feel like you're professional developers, even if you've never touched a line of code. What we're going to specifically enable you to do is build a custom homepage with all of these amazing widget areas. Now I'm going to show this to you in two parts. I'm going to start by using the very popular Woo Themes canvas, because that's a theme that almost everybody who wants to do some cool stuff has tried or looked at. And then I'm going to also show you on our responsive LabZip child theme, because that's the theme that we use in all of our tutorials and for all of our own construction. And they're basically the same idea, just slightly different way to implement it. So if you've never developed before, but you're really excited about empowering yourself to either build a really cool custom homepage for yourself or for a client job, here are the basics. It's going to be super simple. All right, conceptually, the reason we're doing this is to take off of Christian's last video, which hopefully you've already seen at First Web Designer, that shows you how to build an HTML5 page that's responsive. Now, where I want to extend his video is to show you the concepts of how to make a WordPress template that is widgetized. That means that in addition to being, if you want, responsive, it could also have custom widget areas into which you can drop all kinds of goodies. Now, if you've not used WordPress before, today is the moment. Don't delay. Let's go to our dashboard. Let me show you what's going on here. First of all, on our main WordPress dashboard, you'll see the usual suspects, right? But since we're using Canvas in this tutorial, any of you who've used Canvas before know it has a lot of custom things in there that you can do, like hooks and sidebar widgets, etc. But we're going to go farther. We're going to actually go and make the WordPress API work for us by, let's go Appearance Widgets. And we're going to make it that we now have a whole series of custom home widgets. And I've labeled them here, or widgetized areas. I've labeled the areas here, home 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And if I was to drop anything into these, for example, like a text widget, I can use text or HTML or anything I want. But best of all, I can also do other clever stuff. For example, I'm not sure how this will format, but if I were to drop something into home widget 1 in addition to the text, and I go back over here, the beauty is that the calendar will now show up in the home page in that widget. So let's reload the page. And as you can see, now the calendar drops into there. Now, of course, when we're going to do this, the idea is to have a concept in advance, maybe a mock-up drawing. And to do that, you could go over to a great site I love. It's called Balsamiq with a Q. And they've got a free tool over here that you can either play with on the site or download if you want to pay them. They're a terrific company. Get the actual tool. But this lets you do like a mock-up of your layout. Or you could just use any old drawing tool. But the idea is if you have a layout in mind, you can draw it out, and then with a little bit of styling, you can make these various widget areas fit exactly the layout you want. But the goal is ultimately so that you or your client doesn't have to necessarily hand code all the areas on the home page. It's something that an ordinary person could go ahead and use into the future. Okay? So let's drop this out for a second, go back to our original layout. Refresh the page, and let's talk about how we do this, all right? So the concept is what we want to do is create a custom template which will be used by the page that we're going to designate to be the home page. So let's go back to some basic ideas also. In WordPress, under Settings, Reading, you always have the option, regardless of which theme you're using, to either use the latest blog posts for the home page, and oftentimes this will trigger a custom homepage template by itself, or you can designate a particular static page to be your home page. So in this case, you can see for the home page, we've designated a static page called LabZip, right? Now, how do we get to that point? I'm going to show you. But first, we got to make sure that we click Save, and that way we know that the static page we designate will be the home page. Now, when I go back over here to the Page Content Editor, I'm going to go under Pages, All Pages, and you're going to see that I did create a new page called LabZip. And let's see what I did. And this is really simple. You can name it anything you want. It doesn't make a difference. But remember, when you name it something, obviously, that will have an influence, for example, on the default tab name that comes up, or perhaps it might show up in your SEO. So use a name that works for you. And in this particular case, the only thing that I'm really doing here is I'm not putting any content in, because as I'm going to show you in a second, the content editor is not even going to come into play. I'm just ignoring this. I'm gutting out the template. But what I am doing is I'm designating over here on the page attributes that I'm going to use a very special template that I've called custom homepage. So the way that this magic is happening is that the page slug of LabZip is holding a custom template that I've built that I named custom homepage. And it's this custom template that is actually containing all of the code that we need to show these custom widget areas. And to connect this back, the widget areas are showing up, as we just showed, in the widget area of the normal WordPress editor, which allow us to drag and drop things in. All right, so if you're with me so far, let's talk about the custom page template. Now over here, I am using, let me get my editor going here. So let me bring this over here. I've got an editor, and I'll make this so we can see it. And I want to actually ignore this left side because it's not really that important. So over here on the right side, we have a child theme. Now we've discussed child themes in other videos, so I'm not going to go into it, but basically we have made a child theme for Canvas that allows us to add the customization that we need in order to give the results we're looking for. But the benefit of having a child theme is that even when we update the parent theme called Canvas, none of our changes to the Canvas child theme are going to be effective, right? And that's really, really powerful stuff, because that means all these customizations will be able to stay, and we can use the child theme as our laboratory, if you will. Now, in this child theme, which again, I'm not going to cover really in great detail because it's been done before, let's open up a couple of the key files. First of all, in addition to the folder that has the Canvas LabZip name, and you can name the child theme anything you want, the key thing that one needs is a style.css, and let me scale this up as well. These will all be included in the code if you've got one of our subscription packages here, so you'll be able to just copy and paste this or use it as you wish. But basically a child theme really needs a couple elements, including the name, the version number, and then really super important is up at the top here, it has to have the template designation, which names the parent properly, which is Canvas. Lastly, the most important thing, it needs to have a reference to import the style sheet of the parent. I also happened to import the reset style sheet because I thought that was relevant. I wanted to make sure that when we're doing this, we're not really bringing in any of the customizations from the parent for the tutorial. I just want it to be a blank canvas. Now again, this is all covered in another video, so I'm not going to go into great detail. But once you have this child theme with the style.css, we can add all of our CSS modifications to this style sheet, free and clear of any concern that they'll be overwritten. What else do we need? Well, let's talk again about the custom template. Remember, we said we need to have a template that we can access inside of the page that we create. And here's where I have it. It's called Template LabZip. And let's open that up with Smultron, the editor. I'm going to talk about some of the basics here as well. Whenever we're doing a page template, we pretty much want to follow this same format as well. We use the template name, and then we could call it anything we want. As you recall, I called this custom homepage. I could call it anything like, woo, if I wanted to, but I'm not going to. Now, I can also add a little information, which will show up when I'm actually trying to use that template. So for example, if I go to this page and edit it, actually, I take it back, because in this case, it's only going to show the name. The only place we're going to see that is when we're looking at the template. So I'm going to stand corrected during the tutorial. And lastly, there's some other information here that suggests what packages that this comes from and which subpackage. And this is stuff that you don't really need, but it's useful if you're trying to be organized with a lot of files inside. All right. Now, what we did is actually scavenged the bulk of this file from one of the parent theme templates. Now, how did we do that? Well, remember I said that we're creating basically an ordinary page on our setup here, but it has a special template. So therefore, it makes sense that the thing we're going to start with is a regular page, right? Because effectively we're making a page. We want most of the top and bottom of the page. We just want to change the guts of the page so that it's not using the content editor, and instead it's using some widget areas we create. So how did we do that? Again, very simple. I went back into my directory under FTP for my WordPress installation, and under WP Content Themes, I went into the parent Canvas theme. And there I'm looking for a PHP file called page.css. home.php, which is what is used to generate normal pages on the Woo themes called Canvas. And actually it's used for almost all other WordPress themes as well. It's a very specific type of a PHP file generating pages as compared with, let's say, single pages or single posts or archives or anything else. So I'm going to open this up and I'm going to show you what we started with. You can see here that all the stuff with the header was very similar, and then I've got most of the other designations like get the header of the page, then here's where the content starts, and then this is the part where it goes different. You can see here after we get under the main under the main division, that normally in a WordPress page it would have running a loop, which is to say look for all content that matches these particular criterion from the database and bring it in here and display it. And what we did instead is we kind of gutted that out. So right at that point, and I'll space it out a little bit, all this stuff is very similar, but everything else below, all the way to the end of the content area, or actually to the end of the main area, is our own. Now, there's another way to do this as well, just to make sure I'm clear. We could start with the page PHP, but we could also go into our Woo theme and look for another page type of a template. So you notice here all these other templates: template archives, biz, blog, contact, feedback, portfolio. If I wanted to, and I wanted to get closer to an end result, maybe I could use one of these as the starting point as well. So let's say I went to the template portfolio and I open that one up. You'll see it's very similar, but this actually gets me closer because now I have the necessary designation I need called template name, and instead of it saying, page, and I also have some slightly different code set up here. You'll notice, for example, that some of the guts between the main slightly different, but the biggest one is that we've got this thing called main sidebar container, or a division ID called main sidebar container, and likewise you can see here main sidebar container. So what I did is, let's go back over to the portfolio. What I did is I could take this particular page and I could go ahead and remove everything below main. All right. Now, if you're not familiar with HTML5 stuff or HTML in general, you go back and review the video that Christian just did, or some of the basics of First Web Designer, because what this is sort of like naming a subdivision. It's saying here's a street named Main, and it starts here and it ends here, and everything in the middle, of course, is going to be the houses or the people or the cars or the content in between. If in fact we want the top of the page and the bottom of the page to look all the same as a normal setup, that's great. We want to leave that alone, and all we're going to do is sort of bulldoze all the stuff on the block named main, which is the division name or ID name main. Okay, and that's what I did here. And if we go over here, let's space this out a little bit. I made a couple changes that also helped me so that I could do unique styling. You'll notice that I changed the ID here from main to main home. And I also changed the ending so that I didn't get lost. And the reason I did that was that so when I'm doing my custom style sheet stuff, I can go ahead and address just this specific template. If I had been working with the regular main ID, everything I would have designated in that area would have potentially conflicted with an ordinary page. And that would have not necessarily been a bad thing, but might not have been what I wanted to accomplish, because what if in fact I'm doing something really kooky like I'm doing here? I don't want to get confused with maybe it's going to affect other pages. So I just went ahead and changed main to main home. And then what I did is I created these very simple sidebar designators. Now, what are they basically doing are calling additional PHP files to be included into this template. And it's very simple once you see the pattern. It's basically using PHP and then get sidebar and then the name of the sidebar page. And notice I don't include PHP at the end. If you look at the file directory here, when I go into the child theme again, you'll notice that these all say sidebar home, well, let's see here, like here, sidebar home 1.php. But when I'm designating it here, I'm not calling that. I'm calling it home 1. Okay, and you're going to see why that is in a second. And basically the pattern is you can just copy and paste it. I did home 1, home 2, then I put a break or a clear in between. And the reason I did that is because I knew that we're going to have area 1 and area 2, and then I needed to have it where they didn't roll over or float down or anything. I wanted to have a clear designation that these two were on the same level. So by putting a clear in there, that ensures that I had no such trouble. This is going to definitely break those two from the rest. And then I did the same thing for 3, 4, 5, right? 3, 4, 5, and then there's a clear, and the clear causes it to have a nice clean break as well. And of course 6, 7, 8, and then at the very end I did the same thing. I put one last clear in that made sure that at the end everything was good and that the footer would just come up to meet it. All right, so now we've covered kind of the basics of this content, and again you'll be able to copy paste this from the bonus materials. We save this template, and now if you remember, what we would do is create a new page, call it what we want, and be sure to select that template, custom homepage. Okay, now we've got that. We still have to do a couple more things. We have to go ahead and make all of this work. Well, how are we going to do that? Let's go look at the other files. Over here in our child theme, I have got an additional file here called includes, or folder called includes, and this is kind of where all the brains of this operation are. In different themes, you will find this logic in various places. Sometimes this logic will be located in the functions.php file, but in many cases, like with Woo themes, because they have a framework, they include it in a subfolder called includes, and it's called the sidebar init.php when I'm working with Canvas. And what this specific file does, and be sure that, I want to make this clear, we match the directory structure of the parent. So if we go back to the parent, Canvas, you see it has an includes folder, and inside of that are many other files, but you can see there's the sidebar init. So when we're doing our child theme, be sure that you still have the same structure. That in the root of the child theme is includes folder, and inside of that is sidebar init. So we open this up, and now, oh, it's just a lot of code. It's crazy. There's tons of stuff here, right? Well, don't worry. I'm going to walk you through it. Most of this stuff you're going to see already exists, which is beautiful. In fact, once you open up the original, you'll see something that kind of looks like this. And, you know, maybe to prove the point, let's just open that thing up, okay? Let's go back to the parent, and I'll show you. We go under includes, sidebar init. We open this up, and you'll see exactly what I was just showing you. Okay, here's the default theme. The default sidebar init file in the parent theme. And what I did is, like before, I copied this and saved it to the child theme, and then I started modifying it. Well, all you need to do is just get right at the end of the regular widgetized sidebars area, make a little space, and now what we can do is copy one of the two original sidebars, right, and paste it in. And what we're going to do is change this so that it matches what we need for our new areas. And now I'm over here on my finished version. Let's pull this up a little so we can see it. You'll notice that pretty much the elements repeat themselves, but home 1, home 2, home 3. And there's some other stuff I'm going to go over, but basically these are our new 8 widget areas. So all I did was just copy one of the original 2, made some space, and duplicated 8 more. And then I did the hard work, which is just monotonous. I went and made each one of them designated for the new areas with the proper names. So how do we do that? Well, again, we're going to call this home 1. And this area here, this first array, is the title that you're going to see when you're using the widget area. So that's this title here. All right. If I called it something else, I could call it blah, 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 blah. It'll say blah, 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 blah. Okay, it's completely your choice, so make it something easy for you or your client to remember. Next is the ID. Now that's more important, and it's very key that you do not use any spaces, strange characters, or uppercase. This has to be all lowercase because this is treated, again, like other kinds of code. It has to be in a format that won't cause a breakage. All right, so if we want to do that, we would do something with a dash in it, home page. And you can see over here, I actually called it home 1, so maybe I'll call it the same thing, call it home 1. description. That's where you can have fun, okay? So you could call this anything you want, and where it'll show up is when you go into the widget area, that's the little description part here, okay? So let's go ahead and look back, and I can call this something clever like, this is a fun extra little widget area. Woot. Okay. And make sure that also remember that you don't lose that last apostrophe or that last bracket. Okay. Now, there's some other stuff here that basically allows for styling to occur. So any HTML that you want to put before the widget will ensure that you're able to get whatever styling you need here. And so what we've got is something that we can pretty well leave alone because it's standard for all the WooThemes widgets. It basically creates a divide, and then remember it puts in the divide ID, I'm sorry, I could call it the divide, the division ID that we just named up here. So what's this going to do? It's going to say division ID equals, and then it's going to put in home1. And when we look over at our code on the finished page, that's where this will show up. Watch what happens when I look under this with Firebug. We will see that this particular widget area, come on Firebug, you can do it. Get along, little bug. My computer must have gone to Florida. There we go. All right, you can see here that we've got the divide area, and it's got a specific unique class, right? So this is, let me clean this up a little bit. Right here, I keep calling divide. I don't know why I'm saying it. I'm sorry. It's division. Division ID, sidebar home1, right? And then the next one, sidebar home2. And that gives us the power to use unique CSS, as we'll show in a second, to style each of these from each other. Now, they do have common elements as well, which we can talk about, but for the most part, having that unique name for the division gives us the power to do some cool stuff. Okay, so don't forget that when you're naming it, that these will be useful. And so having the before widget gives us that unique CSS designation around the element. And then you also have after the widget, which does the same thing to close that division. And then lastly, you've got something that is nice. It allows you to do something before the title. And here we've added the H3 tag and close the H3 tag. That way the styling will be something that we want, matching the H3 HTML. So right here you can see that. And we have a widget H3 style sheet addition, which I'll show you we can work on in a second. Okay, so let's go back to finishing this off. That's pretty much all there is to this one. And we just can rinse and repeat. So we copy it, we can do the same thing, and now we do the next one. Home2, right? Make sure you get these right, Home2. And then change the rest of the description and the before and after widget if you want to something else. Rinse, repeat, rinse, repeat, rinse, repeat. Now I'm going to close this and not save it because that's the parent. Remember, we did this in our child theme, and so everything we need will be right here. Once we save it, we will have an active widget area. Now, once that happens, we can start rocking and rolling, but there's going to be a big problem, and let me show you what that is. If we don't have a style sheet here, it's going to look horrible. Well, not horrible, but it's going to look completely useless. Let me show you what I mean. Let's just say I go ahead and remove all that style, right? I just cut it out. What's the page going to look like? Well, let's reload and find out. Well, we've got the widget areas, but there's no style, right? So everything's just falling right in line. Well, let's fix that. I'm going to go over some of the basics here and show you how we set this up. So let me save this again. What we basically wanted to do is take advantage of the fact that we've got, let's reload it. There we go. We wanted to have a very specific layout that we worked on with a client in the Balsamic mockup, right? And then that way we were able to go ahead and say, he wanted, let's say, something in this box here, and then a big wide area here where we're going to drop a slideshow in, and then here he wanted 3 other widget areas for things that were useful to their particular setup. And in doing so, we needed to determine how to divide the space. Well, you can kind of see here what I did is a third, a third, and a third, right? So I have 3 equal width widgets below, and then the top widget on the right happens to be 2/3 the width. And then I knew that I wanted something that basically filled 100% of the content area and didn't have any other extraordinary setup. So the CSS is actually pretty simple here. And again, it's included in the bonus material, but let me just walk you through the basics, right? First of all, on each of the widgets, I added some padding, right? And that's 10 pixels. And the reason is what you can see right here. If I didn't have that padding, everything would just bump up against the outline. So let me just designate that and then take it away, and you can see what I mean. So if I go over here and I turn off the padding, you see that doesn't look so hot. It's kind of like everything is caught up to the left like Velcro. So first of all, we're padding the widget class. And what we did also is added something that designated that this only applies to our new home page. Okay, what does that mean? WordPress has a very, very special, cool kind of built-in feature. And what that is it allows you to have conditional CSS based upon the body class. If I was to use Firebug and go all the way to the top here to my body and look at the class, WordPress has one specific class that's a conditional that's always there. Whichever page you have designated as your home page, remember how we did that? We went under, remember, settings, reading, and we selected our home page to be this particular LabZip page. Whenever you do that, that body class has a specific name of home. So we can use that to our advantage, because now we could say that these changes in styling for these widget areas that we're talking about will only apply if we're talking about a widget on the home page. Okay? And let's go back over here. Whoops. There we go. So this padding for these widgets will only apply to the home page when I add the designated element of body.home.widget. All right. The next thing is we went down and we did some styling. I'll just go through this way on Firebug. I did the widget H3, and there's nothing really dramatically changed here. It's just pretty much your standard stuff. But if I wanted to, again, I can jazz that up and increase the font size, make those super huge. And notice, because these are all common attributes, I'm changing all of them at once. Okay, and then we had the same thing for the text area below. We had the font size and the color. If I wanted to, I can make the color red or blue. I never heard of the name Burleywood. Wow, Burleywood, that's a new color. Cool. Green, or any hexadecimal color, right? And this is all covered in many of our other tutorials, so I'm not going to bother you with that. But just know that we can, again, style these elements. Let's look at the layout part, though. The key layout part is, if I go over here, you can see that under the division of Sidebar Home 1, I have said that the width is equal to 30%. And likewise, its matching brother or sister, Sidebar Home 2, has a width of 67%. Now you're going to ask yourself, wait a second, 67 added together with 30, let's go over here, 30, wait a second, that's 97. What happened to the other percentage? Well, remember that we need some space in between, right? So if we had 67 and 33, that'd be great. It'd add up to 100, but we'd have no room to have some space in between. And that's kind of the situation. If you notice here under the division for Sidebar 1, I added a margin where, let's do this like it always goes top, right, bottom, left. So top margin is 0, right margin, there we go, 20 pixels. Now, if I was really being a good boy here and following all the standards, I should continue to use a percentage. So I could use, for example, let's start with 2%. 3% again, always you get in the danger zone. Usually when it adds up to 100, it pushes over. So let's say you're at 99% total. If I edited 2%, we get the same result. So I probably could have, would have, should have done it that way, so I apologize. Now we would have 30% for the widget 1, 67 for the widget 2, and 2% in between adds up to 99%. And now we've got that kind of layout. And just to use the same logic, if we go down further, you can kind of already guess, right? What's going to happen? If I go here, Sidebar Home 3, 30%. Home 4, 32%. Actually, I cheated that one a little bit. And 33%. Now, I can't tell you why I did that. I think I actually made a mistake because I was doing this real quick. But the good news is, even if I was to change those, you can see immediately the effect on the screen. So the concept's more important to me to show you today is, in general, if you're going to do the setup, You want to designate whatever widths you want and then just stick with them and test them out using Firebug. If it causes a little rollover, you can just back it off. But I'm very satisfied with a couple issues. First of all, the right-hand sides of these all line up and the left-hand sides line up, and it gives nice spacing in the middle, and it gives some good space in between. So most important of all is that the CSS we've ended up with gives us the general layout we need, and it's now ready for a client or us to go ahead and add widgets and start making magic on the home page for whatever the purpose may be. Okay, so now let's show you the same idea, but we're going to use the responsive LabZip theme. Now what I've done is a little different variety of things here, but I've got the standard home page, and now just to give you some, creative synergy or inspiration, I've done a couple other boxes here. Basically we did like one widget area that goes the full width, and then two others that go 50-50. By default, as you recall, if you've ever seen our responsive LabZip child theme, we've got the standard responsive parent 3 widgets above. So we got 1, 2, 3, and then I showed a single and then a double, and then we added 3 more just for fun at the bottom. So 4, 5, 6. And if you go over to the dashboard, we got the same idea here where the extra widget areas, let me reload this. Extra widget areas are single, double, 1, 4, 5, 6, and then of course all the rest of them. And in another tutorial we'll tell you and show you how to easily organize this area if you want for more efficiency. But remember, as long as your labels are good, nobody will get confused, and it's nice because everything is kind of easy enough to drag and drop around. Now let's show you the difference in the actual code base. So very similar but slightly different. If we go over to our FTP, we're now in the responsive LabZip child theme, and the files that we're going to add, of course, just like before, we're going to go ahead and change the child theme by adding 3 new widget areas, and these are basically the same like we did over there in the Canvas LabZip where we had sidebar home 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Now we've got under Canvas LabZip, now we have under responsive LabZip, we just call them sidebar home widget single, double, triple. If we open these up, you'll see the code is very, very similar. Effectively, what we're doing is just using the sidebar widget code that comes with the parent theme and modifying it to identify the unique characteristics of this particular one. So for example, here the description is this is your single home widget signal. Here is the title. And again, the wrapper and everything else is standardized. It's slightly different than in Canvas. But I think if you go with the same plan as before, you'll see how to do this very easily. All you need to do is go to the parent theme, responsive, and you'll be able to see the files you need right here, right? So we've got sidebar, PHP. Open that up. And you can use this, just like we showed in the beginning part of this tutorial, as the basis for modifying it to add the second, third, fourth, and as many as you want. So I'm not going to do the code over and over again because it's almost exactly the same. But let me just point out one additional thing. We are now going to modify our functions PHP file. Remember at the beginning part of the tutorial with Canvas, we added an include folder that had a separate sidebar init PHP file. Here we do it slightly different. When we're inside of our responsive LabZip child theme, we're going to open up our functions PHP file, and this kind of holds all that good code. When we open this up, we're going to see something that looks like this. And here, by default, there's an area designated. We say add your own custom functions below, and there's a ending part that says, stop here, go and use the other BuddyPress and WooCommerce and BBPress stuff. So stay in that area above, and what you're going to do is add the similar type of code. We're putting in a function that will basically add the additional registered sidebar areas. Home widget single, double, double 2, widget 4, 5, 6, and then again we're going to put in an action that will hook into the place in the theme where that will normally set up your widget areas, and it will add them in here. So again, without having to get into the gory details, you will be able to create, again, a very similar custom layout on either the responsive LabZip theme or on the WooCommerce canvas. Either way, with a little extra CSS styling and the stuff you're learning in other tutorials, hopefully this gives you a head start. Now, take this idea and extend it further in your mind, because I'll show you how we can add slideshows and add other kinds of cool accessories and widgets and features and so on and so forth, because now you have the power to go ahead and make your own custom homepage layout templates as simple as we just did here. If you have any questions, drop me a line, of course, over First Web Designer or LabZip. This is Spence, the evil genius. I'll see you next time.